Welcome back, everyone. Now we are going to start with our next chapter, and this is defense. But again, before we start, please let me know if the audio and video both are working fine. Please give me a thumbs up if everything is fine. Great, wonderful. All right, so let's begin with our session. So, next chapter for us is defense. Now, defense as a chapter, again, I would say that this is a chapter which is very much current affairs oriented. The questions that we get, they are pretty much based on current affairs. So that's why your preparation, apart from whatever we are doing, a big part of your preparation will also be related to your um current affairs. So especially the current affairs that you see over the next 1 year, that will become important. Now I'll tell you about one source, and that source is very very essential in understanding, or let's say one good source of any development in the field of defense. And this is the website of DRDO. Now, in the when you go to DRDO website, there is something which is a monthly newsletter. There's a monthly newsletter that they have published. Sorry. There's a monthly newsletter. All right. So this monthly newsletter, you will find the PDF on the website of DRDO itself. In that, what you see is it will be just like a 20-page newsletter, or sometimes 24 pages newsletter, out of which the second part is anyway of no use for you, because second part of that newsletter will be all the events that were conducted by DRDO within offices, outside offices, and so on. So that's obviously not related to your preparation. But the first half, the first 8-10 pages, I would say, the first 8 to 10 pages, the first 8 to 10 pages is where we see that this monthly newsletter gives you all the current affairs or any new development with regards to DRDO. So any new launch that has been done, any new test that has been done, any missile that has been test fired, all these things, any, let's say, new aircraft that India has been working on. So anyway, anything that India is doing in the field of defense, the first 8 to 10 pages of this monthly newsletter will be about that. And just keep following this much. This will be more than enough for you. Hardly would take not more than half an hour for you to complete this in a month. So monthly you need to dedicate just half an hour, or not even half an hour, I would say just 15 to 20 minutes, that should. So that's it. So that's why do this much, so that any current affairs related to defense can be easily covered. Otherwise, the problem with current affairs of defense in the newspapers is that there are smaller articles here and there published in the site somewhere, and many times it's very easy to miss a defense related news from the newspaper. So that's why from that perspective it's an easier source. It is just one simple newsletter every month that you just have to go through and you complete it. So just do this much. All right, if you can just do this much, all the current affairs related to defense can be very easily covered. Now, one mistake that we often see when it comes to defense is that, see, when it comes to defense, of course there are a lot of missiles, there are a lot of aircrafts, there are a lot of things that India has, there are a lot of defense related equipments that India has. Now if you start reading about all these equipments, then you don't have enough time. And unfortunately we have seen this happen with a lot of candidates. A lot of students do this, that you just keep on reading about everything that you find, that if India has 50 types of missiles, you start mugging up all the 50 types of missiles, all the aircrafts. You can't really do it because it's impractical, first of all. That there are missiles, almost 50, 60 of them. There are aircrafts, there are helicopters, there are submarines, there are navy ships. Forget about everything. There are different types of bullets. There are different types of bullets that are used in the artillery gun. Then just 5 times of only radars that India has. So that's why you cannot just go on mugging up each and everything, remembering each and everything. No, don't do that. Only based on current affairs. All right, only based on current affairs. Whatever you see, I would say that it's more than enough for you. Most of the things being done by the government will be cleared through the DRDO website, and some of the things which are private aspects through the newspaper. So that much is enough, and that too will be very, very less in number. So that's why beyond this nothing is required. So coming to the basics of this chapter, it's a small chapter for us because, as I told you, questions largely come from current affairs, but there are some basics that you should always be ready with. You should remember them well. So those are the areas that we are going to cover in this particular chapter. So coming to this chapter, first and foremost, we have missiles. Now, when it comes to a missile, what is a missile? We say that it is a rocket propelled weapon designed to deliver an explosive warhead with great accuracy at high speed. So, explosive warhead. The structure of a missile will be very similar to the structure that we had seen in our space launch vehicles. So, in very similar manner, we see that these are actually seen. Now, in all these cases, what we observe is that same as what we discussed for the launch vehicles, this part will have the fuel. This is the part where you will have the fuel and the oxidizer, and this is the part which is called as the payload. This is the part which is called as the payload, or this is the part which is also called as the warhead. This is called as a warhead because this is where you keep the explosive, whether nuclear explosive, chemical explosive, biological explosive, whatever you want to keep. Whatever kind of explosive you are keeping it in this warhead. So this is how we look at a typical design of a missile. Now, when it comes to a missile generally we think of missile in a manner that they will be offensive in nature, that they will be used in uh, attacking an enemy, but that's not necessary. That's not necessary. A missile can both be uh, offensive and defensive in nature. All right, they can be offensive or defensive. They can be offensive or defensive. So for example, let's say any incoming aircraft or any incoming missile, we can use the missiles to even destroy these incoming objects as well. So that's why many a times it is not only used in an offensive way, it is also used in a defensive way. Now, for any missile, all right, for any missile that you read about, there are few things that become very, very important, and this is on the basis of how we classify the missile. Any missile that you read about, these are some of the basic information that you should always remember, and these are the basics that you should always notice while reading about them. So first and foremost, first classification is on the basis of the range. So on the basis of the range, we have long range missiles, short range missiles, intermediate range missiles, and intercontinental range missiles. So short range missiles, generally speaking, these will be having very less range. Maybe they will have some 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers of range, or maybe up to 100, 200, 300 kilometers can be the range of these missiles. Then intermediate range missiles will be a little more than that. We'll see that they would have a range of up to let's say 1000 kilometers. So that will typically be the range of intermediate range missiles. Then you have long range missiles that will be more than 1000, but 2000, 2500 maybe will be the range. And then you have the intercontinental missiles. So intercontinental missiles will be very long range missiles, that is they will have a range of more than 2500, 3000 kilometers, up to even 10,000, 12,000 kilometers. So that's why they will have a range which is very, very long. So this is how we classify the missiles. This is the basis of classifying the missile, on the basis of the range. Second is on the basis of the start and the end point, meaning where do they start, where do they end. So on that basis, we have surface to surface, surface to air to air to surface missiles, meaning that they are starting from the surface and ending on a surface, then it is a surface to surface missile. And they are starting from air, ending on a surface, so then it is air to surface missile. So on the basis of the start and the end point, this is another way in which we classify the missiles. Another way to classify, and perhaps the most important classification, is on the basis of the trajectory. Trajectory meaning the kind of path that they would take. All right. So based on the kind of path that they take, there are two types of missiles that we have. One called as ballistic missile, and the other one is called as cruise missile. All right. Ballistic and cruise. Now, when it comes to the ballistic missiles, what ballistic missiles basically do is that ballistic missiles will have a fixed parabolic path. All right, they have a fixed parabolic path. Now, when I say fixed parabolic, what is parabolic path? Basically, a path like this. All right, so we are saying that it will have a fixed parabolic path. It's just like how you take a stone, and if you, let's say, take a stone or a ball and you start, when you throw it, the kind of path that that ball or the stone will take is called as the parabolic path. So in case of ballistic missiles, they would have the same fixed parabolic path, whereas in case of cruise missiles basically, the path can be controlled. So they are closer to being an airplane, where you are able to control the path of the movement. So that's why the basic difference between ballistic and a cruise missile. So now, when we look at the differences, let's try to just understand the basic differences between a ballistic and a cruise missile. So first and foremost, on the basis of the path, we are saying that ballistic missiles have a fixed parabolic path. Fixed parabolic path, whereas in case of cruise missiles, they path can be controlled. All right, path can be controlled. So this is the first difference that we have between them. Now, there are other differences also between ballistic and the cruise missile, but these differences, in a manner, you can say that they are being derived from the first basic difference that we have between a ballistic and a cruise missile. So, for example, we see that ballistic missiles generally travel at higher speed. They travel at higher speed, whereas cruise missiles have a lower speed in comparison to the ballistic missile. Now, this is basically, you can say in a manner, this is derived from the first difference itself, because you have a fixed parabolic path. So then after that, you can send it, you can fix the path and you can launch it at a very high speed. Whereas in case of a cruise missile, because the path has to be controlled, the path has to be maneuvered. Because of that, what we see is that the missile speed cannot be very high. All right, missile speed, because you are controlling that speed, the speed will be on a lower end. Then after that, ballistic missile, we see that they have higher destructive capacity. They have higher destructive capacity, whereas cruise missiles generally would have a lower destructive capacity. So basically, ballistic missiles can carry a lot more warhead, a lot more explosives as compared to cruise missiles. Now, this is also important for us to do because of this fact that we know that the cruise missiles, the path is being controlled, whereas in ballistic missiles we are not controlling the path. So because the path is fixed, the path is prefixed, that's why we want a higher destructive capacity, so that even if, let's say, it is not really falling exactly at the location where it needs to fall, even then it should be able to cover that particular area. So that's why what we see in ballistic missiles is that they have lower accuracy. They have lower accuracy, and whereas when it comes to cruise missiles, they have higher accuracy. They have higher accuracy. So because they have higher accuracy, because of that only, the destructive capacity requirement is lower, because it is very precise in following its location. And then there is one last difference between the two, that we see that ballistic missiles generally are strategic missiles, generally strategic, generally strategic, Whereas in case of cruise missiles, these are generally tactical missiles. And I'll tell you what the meaning of these two terms are, that what do we mean by strategic missile and what do we mean by tactical missile. We'll discuss that. So this basically is the difference. These are the differences, you can say, between ballistic and the cruise missiles. So mainly the difference is in the path and how they process their path, how they follow their path. All the others are basically derived from the first part itself. All right, so this is basically what we see with regards to ballistic and the cruise missile. So that's why if you look at this picture, this is how they would travel. That ballistic missile will have a fixed parabolic path, correct? They have a fixed parabolic path. They have a fixed parabolic path. Whereas when it comes to the cruise missiles, we see that they would have a path that can be maneuvered. So in this manner, we see that this is how we look at ballistic versus cruise missiles. Now, one term that we had discussed was strategic and tactical. What do we mean by strategic missiles and tactical missiles? See, tactical missiles are the ones which will be used in a battlefield. They're the ones which are largely used in the battlefield, and they are low range missiles. They are low range missiles. Generally, you will see that the tactical missiles have a range of like 10 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 80 kilometers, and so on. Very low range missiles, anti tank missiles. So, these are missiles which are actually about to be used in a battle. When you are at war with somebody, that is where you actually are going to use a tactical missile. So, that's why lower capacity, lower range, but higher accuracy because it has to be used in an actual war. Strategic missiles have a completely different purpose. We say that they are strategically important for a country. They're important for a country mainly to also showcase the power, showcase the might of a country. We need strategic missiles. Generally speaking, these will be long range missiles. All right, these will be long range missiles, long range, nuclear capable, nuclear capable with second strike capacity. Right, so long range, nuclear capable, second strike capacity. So that's why from that perspective, when we are looking at these strategic missiles, they are largely not going to be used. I mean, for all practical purposes, we perhaps will never use a strategic missile, because strategic missiles normally are very long range missiles. They are nuclear capable, uh, and when we say that they have second strike capacity, the meaning of this term, second strike capacity, is that we have the capacity to strike after being struck. All right. This basically is capacity or capability to strike after being struck. So it means that even if somebody has already attacked us, and let's say they have actually launched a missile against us, we will have a second strike capacity. So these kind of missiles will be kept at off locations from where they can now be launched. From there, they can be launched and they can actually be used to strike back. So that's why these are strategic missiles. This is more, you can say, this is more of a show off for a country, that we just want everybody to know that look, we have these missiles. So if you are going to attack us, just know that we have the capacity to strike you back, because we have all these long range strategic missiles which are even nuclear capable. So that's why it helps in kind of bringing in a balance of power. That, let's say, if China wants to attack us or Pakistan wants to attack us, they just know that even if they want to attack us, they do attack some of the key cities of, let's say, India. Then they just know that India has the capacity to strike back even after being struck. So that's why they would maintain that balance, and that's why they would not take that kind of a risk, because they know that India is nuclear capable and India has all these long range missiles. So that's why strategic missiles are more important from that perspective. Strategically, we say that's why that they are strategically important for a country. So these classification of missiles, they become very crucial. Whenever you read about any missile, just know whether they are long range or short range missiles, whether they are ballistic or cruise missiles, whether they are surface to surface, surface to air, what kind of missile, whether they are nuclear capable or not, whether they are strategic in nature or not. So these are some of the key areas that become very, very crucial for us to understand the value of a missile. And whenever the questions also come, the questions often are asked on these kind of areas. The questions are often asked on these basic concepts behind the missile. All right, so that's why this is how we classify the missiles. Now, coming to the missiles in India, the very first missile system that India started with what was the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. Now, until 1983, we did not have missiles. We were not nuclear. We were not having those missile capabilities. But in 1983, under the prime ministership of Indira Gandhi, we see that we started with the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program, and as a part of this missile program, there were five types of missiles. There were five types of missiles. The program, five types of missile programs that India started. Name them, please. That's why I've left it blank here. Please name them and I'll write it down here. Can you tell me which are these five types of missiles that India started with 1983? Okay, Agni. Chalo, I'll take the first name. Not Brahmos. No, Brahmos is not a part of it. Akash, correct. What else? Yes, Prithvi, correct. What else? Nag, perfect. There's one which is still left. Many of you have answered, but still there is one name that has not been named yet. Prahar came later. Prahar actually is a kind of Prithvi missile only, so can't be named as another one here. No, not Varun or Garuda, no. Trishul, yes. Right? So these were the five. So if you want to remember Patna. All right. The beloved city of Patna. P for Prithvi, A for Agni, T for Trishul, N for Nag, and A for Akash. So in this manner, you probably can remember that these are the five missiles. So these are the five missile programs that we started with, and these were the parts of the first integrated guided missile development program that we started working with. Now, out of which we have seen that all these missiles have been very, very important. Agni missiles, especially, have been in the news recently because Agni 5 was tested last year, and that's why this year a question actually was asked on these missiles. So, Agni missiles, Agni 5 was tested last year by India, and when we tested the Agni 5 missiles, we saw that we actually this was in the news, and as per India has been saying that this has a range of almost 5,000 kilometers up to 5,500 kilometers. Now there is an interesting controversy here that Agni 5, according to the officials in India, Agni 5 missile has a range of 5,000 to 5,500 kilometers. China disagrees. China says that Agni 5 missiles have a range of 8,000 kilometers, and India is not telling the truth because they want to avoid certain international controversies. What controversy? Because if you have a range of 8,000 kilometers or 10,000 kilometers, then in that case, you have a capacity to strike even the European countries, right? You can very easily strike European countries. So then the European countries have a problem with it. Almost a decade back, there was a news about Agni 6 missiles, that India is working on Agni 6 missiles, which will have a range of 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers. Now, these missiles with a capability of 10 to 12,000 kilometers they created international controversy. European countries started saying that why does India need to have a 10,000 kilometer or 12,000 kilometer strike capacity? They do not have any problems with us. We do not have any problem with them. Then why do they have missiles that can even strike us? So this kind of a controversy was stirred up, and there is a very simple answer for it. I mean, all these countries also have missile capability of 8,000 to 10,000 kilometers. They do not have any problems with India. Then why do they have missiles that can strike India? So we can also raise the same questions, but we are not raising the same questions. So overall, these kind of issues happened. India, after that, stopped talking about Agni 6 missiles. It was said that there is no Agni 6. It's just in the words, there are just rumors here and there that there is an Agni 6 missile, but it is also believed, unconfirmed reports, I would say, unconfirmed confirmed reports, that India actually has been working on Agni 6, a missile, or a Surya missile, another name that is very often used. That these are the missiles that are going to have a capacity of 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers. And having a missile with 10,000 kilometers does not mean that we are going to strike somebody. Correct? It's just that we are capable, and you should just know that we are capable. That's it. That is the basic motive behind all these missiles. Because strategic missiles, for example, these long range missiles, perhaps will never be used by India, and I hope that we never have to use these kind of missiles. Because if these missiles are being used, it simply means that we are at war with somebody. So let's hope that we are not. Let's hope that that's not the future that we have to worry about. But these missiles are just important for the balance of power, just to just to announce just to announce to the world that look, we have these missiles. That's it. And probably they'll never be used, but we should just have those missiles. So that is precisely what we see in these kind of cases. Now, apart from that, there are missiles, out of these five missiles that we have, there are missiles which are outside the scope, because these missiles had very strategic plans. So Agni missile and Prithvi missiles, these would be ballistic missiles. And in Agni missiles especially, we see that there are versions of Agni 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So Agni 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5, we see that gradually we have been increasing the range of these missiles. So the Agni 5, for example, that's why it has the longest range of out of all these missiles. So that's why we understand that these missiles, they may not be they may not actually be required, but they are actually important from strategic point of view. Similarly, Prithvi missiles are also ballistic in nature. They are also surface to surface missiles. So very simple, and there are three versions of Prithvi missiles: one for the Indian Army, one for the Navy, one for the Air Force. So in this manner, we have these two. Then after that, Trishul missiles were a very small range, very short range missiles, just having a range of not more than 10 kilometers. But with Trishul missiles, we could not really succeed a lot. A lot of tests that we did for Trishul missiles, all these missiles, they actually failed. They could not really succeed in a lot of cases. So overall, what we saw then was that Trishul missiles ultimately got replaced, and they got replaced with another missile that we had bought from Israel. This was Barak. So today we have Barak 1 and Barak 8 missiles. So these missiles, basically, they were replacements of Trishul, because Trishul trials, they did not succeed a lot, and that's why as a like for like replacement, we saw that we bought Barak from Israel. Then after that, Akash is a missile which is also fitted with a radar. It is fitted with a radar system also, and its basic role is to comprehend anything that is incoming. So any incoming missile has to be uh, targeted, or any incoming aircraft also can be found and targeted with the help of Akash. And then Nag basically is anti-tank missile, family of anti-tank missiles. So there are various different types of Nag missiles. Some can be fired from the surface. Some can be fired from a helicopter. So we have Helina, which is for helicopter Nag, that you will be able to launch it from the helicopter. So that's why we see that all these missiles were first designed by India. And then after that, later on, there are other missiles which are outside the scope of integrated guided missile development program, where the most important name is BrahMos. Most important name there is BrahMos. So BrahMos basically is what? It is a supersonic cruise missile. Now, this is very very important, that BrahMos is supersonic cruise. Generally, what we did discussed is that cruise missiles are slow, right? They are slower as compared to the ballistic missiles. So, generally speaking, what we see is that ballistic missiles are supersonic and cruise missiles are subsonic. All right, we see that largely that cruise missiles are subsonic in nature. So here we are seeing that this is a cruise missile which is supersonic. All right, this is a cruise missile which is supersonic, which is largely unheard of. And BrahMos is the fastest cruise missile of the world. BrahMos is the fastest cruise missile of the world, which is very, very difficult task to master, and we actually have been able to do that. Now, when it when it comes to the BrahMos missile, the first BrahMos missile that we started working with had a speed of up to Mach 2.8 and a maximum range of 290 kilometers. All right, Mach 2.8 and 290 kilometers. Now, Mach 2.8 means what? That it has a speed up to 2.8 times the speed of sound. So that is why Mach 2.8. Now, why these numbers were chosen also is mainly because of the fact that we were not a part of any missile technology regimes. So, for any country which is outside the scope of Missile Technology Control Regime or MTCR, they are not allowed to go beyond Mach 3 or beyond having a 300-kilometer range for a cruise missile. Then India became a part of MTCR, right? India became a part of MTCR. So this was BrahMos 1. So then India became a part of MTCR. And with MTCR, with India being a part of it, we see that now we are targeting a range of 450 kilometers with a speed of up to max 7. This is BrahMos 2. So BrahMos 2, that's why we are saying that it's a hypersonic cruise missile. So faster than BrahMos 1, which is already the fastest cruise missile of the world. So that's why we see that this is a scenario where we'll be able to just uh, have the best of the cruise missile that the world has. One more development here is that we are also going to use the scramjet engine here. We're also planning to use the scramjet engine. So if you remember, we discussed about the scramjet engine in space technology, where these are air breathing engines, right? So they would be using air from outside as an oxidizer. So in BrahMos 2, we see that this is something that we are going to try. So this is a prototype of BrahMos 2, and this is under construction right now. Very soon we are expecting that BrahMos 2 will also be ready. Then after that, there is another missile program that we have, and this is Indian Ballistic Missile Development Program. All right, Indian Ballistic Missile Development Program. So now, as a part of the Ballistic Missile Defense Program, we see that there are two defense programs that we started working on. One called as Prithvi Air Defense, and the second one called as Advanced Air Defense. Prithvi Air Defense and Advanced Air Defense. Now, these two programs, all right, these two programs basically are to protect India from any outside attack, from any missile attack or any aircraft attack. These are basically going to help against them. Now, when it comes to these two systems, one being Prithvi Air Defense and another one being Advanced Air Defense, Prithvi Air Defense is exo-atmospheric. This is exo-atmospheric, whereas advanced air defense is endo-atmospheric. So understand exo-atmospheric and endo-atmospheric. So exo-atmospheric means that it will be in the upper part of the atmosphere. That's why exo-atmospheric. And advanced air defense will be in the lower part of the atmosphere. That's why endo-atmospheric range. So one is low altitude missile and the other one is high altitude missile. Now, flying at higher altitude actually is easier for an interception as compared to the low altitude missile. So that's why development of this has not been easy. That there is a multi-layer ballistic missile defense program that we now have. So we saw that for the first time, Prithvi Air Defense and Advanced Air Defense, they were tested in 2006 and 7, and since then we have been working on scaling up of these two, and they will be used in the upcoming years. 2022 was initially the date that we had finalized for starting the use of these, but we still see that there is um, an AD-1 missile actually, which also has been working on simultaneously. So AD-1 is also air defense program. So AD-1 missile is also in the talks. So 2022 it was supposed to be ready, but we still see that there is some delay that has happened here, and maybe in the coming years this will be inducted into the Indian defense. So it's not that it's not ready, it's ready. A lot of tests have happened. I mean, we just discussed that the first test happened in 2006 and 7, and ever since then, improvements, slight improvements here and there have happened, and multiple tests have been done. So officially, it is still not a part of the defense, but very soon it is going to be. So this is what we see with the defense program. Then one topic that can be important is radar, because of late we see that now we have aircrafts which can bypass radars. So that's why what exactly is radar and how does a radar work? Just try to understand this. So radar stands for radio detection and ranging. Now in this case, in case of a radar, what we basically see is that there will be a system like this. Yeah, there will be a system like this where we see that there will be a transmitter and a receiver. All right, a transmitter and a receiver. Now this transmitter will transmit the waves. It will transmit the waves. Now these waves that travel from the radar, they'll travel and they will maybe go and collide with any aircraft or any missile, etc., that is there in the in, let's say, inside this Indian air range. So what happens is that this will collide and it will reflect back from here. All right, it will collide and it will reflect back. So now what happens is that the we know the speed, because largely we use microwaves here. Largely we use microwaves and or radio waves. So microwaves or radio waves are used. So these waves will go, they will collide with the surface and they'll reflect back. Now while they reflect back from the surface, see, speed of an electromagnetic radiation is fixed, right? Speed is fixed. We know the time it took for it to go and come back. So when you know the speed, when you know the time, you can calculate the distance. So that's why distance can be calculated on the basis of the transmission and the reception of these waves. So in this manner, we see that there is a duplexer system which can work simultaneously as a transmitter and a receiver. And based on the signals that are received, we see that there is a decision making unit, and that will take a decision based on that, will try to process that information, and an output will be given accordingly. So this is basically what we see when it comes to a system like radar. So radar, that's why becomes a very very important, very crucial system in today's defense mechanism. But then what we see is that there is a new wave of aircrafts called as the fifth generation aircraft. The fifth generation aircrafts have some capacity to even bypass these radars. Now, what exactly happens? Why stealth? Stealth basically because they kind of are invisible to a radar. All right, they can very easily travel without actually getting caught by the radar. Now, when it comes to the stealth technology, what we understand is that there are various features that have been added so that they can actually show stealth. How exactly do we do that? First and foremost, if you look at this particular picture, so what you see is that it has very sharp edges, correct? It has very sharp edges and it has very flat surfaces. So, one, sharp edges and flat surfaces. And at the same time, the color, you'll see that they are black in color or very dark in color. And the material that is used, material also is used in a manner that it is capable of absorbing radiations. All right, so radiation absorbing, radiation absorbing material. radiation absorbing material. So these are some of the parameters that are maintained for stealth to work. So what happens is, because of sharp edges and flat surfaces, what can happen is that this will help in scattering of the waves. All right, this will help in the scattering of the waves. So basically what happens is that the waves that are going towards this, let's say the waves that are going towards it, it will just reflect, it will reflect in various different directions. So instead of directly getting reflected back, we see that because of these kind of arrangements, they are actually deflecting in various different directions. Similarly, black color and radiation absorbing material, they will absorb, right? They will absorb the waves. So that's why, with the help of all these parameters, we see that all these, you can say, properties, we would be able to use the stealth technology to bypass any radar. So that's why we see that fifth generation aircraft, they actually are employing these kind of techniques. Even 4.5 generation aircraft like Rafale, they partially are applying these kind of technologies. So this is basically what we see with stealth technology. So just understand the basics of what we mean by stealth, if at all these kind of things appear in the newspaper or the question paper. So this is about this chapter. As I told you that this is a very small chapter and not a lot to do beyond current affairs. So that's why I told you about that newsletter, that over the next 1 year you'll have to keep following it, so that any current affairs that comes in, you should be able to understand this. All right. So, any question if you have from defense chapter? Anyone? Any doubt? Where can I find DRDO newsletter? You just have to, as I told you, go to the DRDO website. On the DRDO website, you will find the DRDO newsletter PDF. Month wise, they have arranged the PDF. You just have to click to download that PDF. That's it. And as I told you, just the first 8-10 pages of that every month. Please just go through it. You'll find all the major events in India that happened in the last month. Will it contain private sector stuff like drones which are procured from private sectors? No, not in most of the cases. But again, drone as a technology is not really required for us to study. I don't, because it's more of a policy thing about drones than the concept or the technology of drones that is important for us. So that's a policy wise. If the government of India does something, then in that case, we have to look upon the drones. Otherwise, not. Y squared equal to 4ax. Yes, the parabolic path formula, correct. Mains PYQs will take tomorrow. We'll take it tomorrow for from various different chapters. So just wait. Yeah, same goes for defense exercises as well. That if at all a defense exercise happens, then in that case that can become a part of current affairs. So that's why I said that defense as a chapter always has to be seen in the context of current affairs. Beyond certain basics that we discussed, it's all about current affairs when it comes to this chapter. Not a lot of questions have come in the past, but whenever they have come, they actually have come in the context of current affairs. And that too largely in prelims. Only one question has come in the mains examination. Otherwise, all the other questions have always appeared in your prelims only. All right. So let's start with our next chapter, and this is intellectual property rights. Now, when it comes to intellectual property rights, again, as a chapter, first and foremost, I would say that this is a chapter which is more important for your mains examination than prelims. This is largely a discussion oriented chapter. So that's why chances are higher that you get a question in your mains examination than in your prelims examination. But having said that, it's not that questions do not come in prelims. Questions have come in the prelims also in the past, but largely the structure of the chapter is much more discussion oriented than many of the other chapters that we saw. And it's a very different chapter compared to what we have seen until now. There's no technology here, so there is no technical terms that you have to break your heads on. So it's an easier chapter from that perspective. So intellectual property rights, we perhaps will not be able to finish this chapter today. So maybe half of the chapter we'll do today, and then we'll continue in tomorrow's class in the morning. Anyway, to start with intellectual property rights, first and foremost, let's try to understand that what is intellectual property right. So before that, we need to understand what is intellectual property, and for that, what is intellectual. So when we say that something is intellectual, it basically is something to do with the human brain. That application of the human brain, when it shows some kind of good qualities, we say that it is intellectual. So something which is associated with the same intelligence. So intellectual property, in that sense, when we say that something is an intellectual property, it means that it is the creation of the mind. So it is something that somebody's mind has created, and that's why it is an intellectual property belonging to that person. So for example, let's say if I write a book, so if I write the book, then it's my intellectual property. It should be counted as my intellectual property. I write a song, I direct a film, or maybe let's say I invent something new, completely new product has been invented by me. It's all what? It's all creation of the mind. Even a simple drawing, a painting that I've done, intellectual property. So anything that is the creation of the mind will be called as intellectual property, and the rights that are associated with these intellectual property would be called as intellectual property rights. So this is how we define what intellectual property right is. So what is intellectual property? Intellectual property refers to the creation of the mind. All right, creation of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic work, designs and symbols, names and images, which are used in commerce. And there are multiple examples. There are multiple different examples that we have which can be called as an intellectual property. For example, it's a vaccine can be counted as an intellectual property because some individual or some company made it, and then that's why they would now have uh, they can now call it as the intellectual property belonging to that individual or the company. So and there are multiple such examples, and this is basically what we are going to study in the course of this particular chapter. Now, when it comes to intellectual property, we need to understand that why do we need intellectual property rights? What is the need for protection of the intellectual property? Because overall, we do understand that fine, somebody has done very well, or somebody has very sincerely dedicated a lot of time into understanding of what this is, and they have created a new product. So of course we should give them something for this, and that's why we can understand that rights of the creator has to be protected, because it creates a capacity to create and invent. Correct. That once I know that my rights are being protected and I am going to get intellectual property rights, I might feel safer and I might keep on working on it. But let's say that I have done something and somebody else is taking that credit, and not only credit but also commercial success out of it. Then maybe in the future I would never want to repeat that mistake again, and perhaps I never invent again. So it's a possibility that can happen. And protection that is provided, the protection actually encourages further innovations. That once we see that the public is liking something, that public has shown some interest, and public has shown some liking for a given product, for some kind of product, then of course I would want to work further on it, so that I can improve upon the product based on, let's say, whatever feedbacks I have received from the public. And that's why better research and development can happen in these fields. We might see that better developments will happen here, and we all would be able to do a better job altogether here. So that's why we see all these things actually they add up to the entire value of the creator. So creators perspective, thinking and understanding creators perspective, I would still say that it's easy. for us to understand that yes, why not protect the rights, that if somebody has invested so much of time, money and effort in building something, creating something, then of course all the rights should remain with themselves, with them, and not with somebody else, and somebody else should not have a chance to even misuse that. So whether it is a new innovation, whether it is just a painting, from the smallest individual thing to a very big technology, we see that in all these cases something like this becomes very, very crucial. So overall, that's why from the creator's perspective, we understand that there are a lot of things that will be good, and it creates a better capacity altogether in the minds of the creator altogether, or the innovator. But it's not only the creator who gets the benefit out of intellectual property rights, it's also the consumer. The consumer also gets a lot of benefits. For example, it can lead to economic growth of the entire sector. Just think, and for all these things, let me take example of your mobile phone. All right. So when mobile phone developed for the first time, it was just a machine which could help you talk while you are somewhere else, when you're not home. Then after that, slowly and steadily, we see that there are new features that were added, that now the mobile phone would also be able to send an SMS. Then the mobile phone will also have a camera. The mobile phone will also let you play games on it. And then after that, smartphones, touch screen, and XYZ whatnot. So today we see that there are so many things that the smartphone is able to do for you, but it all started with one simple principle, that it should be able to help you talk on the phone while you are somewhere outside. But look at the industry that it has created by itself today, correct? The industry that it has created, it's not only about the service providers, it's not only about the mobile phone companies, but the entire economy has developed around this mobile phone. Each and every company, each and every service will have its app, which is available on your mobile phone. Every office work perhaps you can do on your mobile phone. You can study everything on your mobile phone, whether it's a video lecture that perhaps many of you are watching on a mobile phone, or whether it is just a PDF that you can run and study on your mobile phone. So we know that there are n number of things that we can do on the mobile phone itself. So that's why mobile phone has created its own economy altogether, right? It has created its own economy, and that goes beyond just you talking on the phone. So that's why it has really led to this economic growth, so many job opportunities, if not anything, so many self employment opportunities. Even if you're not talking about the big companies and the big employment opportunities, just go around your town and see how many mobile phone repair shops are present in your town, right? Every nook and corner, everywhere you'll find that there is some kind of some mobile phone repair shop or some accessory shop that is selling something related to the mobile phone. What are these? These are self employment opportunities that has been generated for the people through the development that mobile phone has seen, through the innovations that mobile phone has seen, correct? Similarly, we see that there are better and more efficient products that will also keep coming in the market. And let me just continue with the mobile phone. Today, the mobile phones that we get, we probably will see that the mobile phones last longer. They are much better than what they used to be 10 years back. They are performing much better. They don't hang as much. They would not have the kinds of bugs and the issues that they used to. And in general, any basic phone or any good phone, or let's say even a very cheap phone also, would very easily last for like 2 3 years at least, and after that only they wouldn't. And if they're not lasting, the company would not last. There is a fierce competition in this market. Anyone who falls behind will just fall behind. They'll never be able to catch up. Look at what happened with the biggest of the companies in this particular sector. That if I talk about Nokia being the market leader in mobile phones when it started almost 15 20 years back. But where is Nokia today? It almost has lost its race to the competitors, right? Because the first operating system that Nokia used to work with was the only operating system back then, and others did not have the stability of that operating system that Nokia had. But then after that, probably Nokia took a wrong decision into launching Windows smartphone, whereas iOS, that is Apple, and Android were two operating systems which were largely being liked by the people. In that particular scenario, Nokia probably trying to be apart from these two, uh, different from these two operating systems, they launched their own operating system which could not really succeed, and that led to almost the exit of Nokia from the market. They even tried to re-enter the market with their Android mobile phones but could not succeed. Same goes for, let's say, an Indian company, Micromax. Micromax released its phone, became so popular, highly high selling phones in the range of 10,000, 12,000 rupees, but they lost to the competition that was presented by the Chinese companies. The Chinese companies started coming with a better and more reliable mobile phones in the same range. Companies like Xiaomi started to come, and all these other companies, they started to uh, come one by one. Xiaomi, then Vivo, then Oppo, and OnePlus, and whatnot. So in all these cases, we see that all of a sudden there was a flood of all these Chinese companies in the market, and they completely took over the Indian market. And all these Indian companies, they then struggled and they could not compete with the Chinese companies. So they lost the race. They basically lost the race, and they never could return to this market because they had lost that reliability from the customer. So that's why we see that it becomes very, very crucial, and it does lead to the reliability, efficiency, and better products coming into the market. Similarly, it also helps in publications, musics, and film as well, because these are also segments which are very much consumer oriented. That you start liking good films, you start appreciating better made films with better stories, better films will be shown to you, and they'll start releasing. If you like the same old stories that used to come 20 years back, then maybe they'll have their own market. So what we see is that it is something also which is very much market driven and very much consumer driven. Whatever the consumer wants is what consumer gets. We have seen this kind of a transformation during the time of COVID, that while we were all locked down, we were not actually going out, we were staying back to remaining isolated. We saw that so many OTT platforms started to come, so many, we got exposed to international films as well, and we started appreciating better stories everywhere. So all of a sudden we see that there is a shift in the way Indian filmmaking also has started happening, that they also started focusing on stories that probably people will start liking. So we see that even films, music, etc., they are also very much consumer oriented. Not only that, even publications, even books are consumer oriented. And this is something that you will see, just go to any bookshop, any big bookstore. What you will basically see is that today, for example, what I noticed in the last couple of years is that there are so many books in these bookshops which are related to some kind of personal finance, how to manage your money and psychology of money and all these kind of things. We see that there are so many books that have been released here because we see that there is a changing trend, that people in India now has a very huge young population which has started earning. And these people who have started earning, they are looking for areas where they can invest. They are looking for opportunities to invest their money. So wherever they find those opportunities to invest money, they'll take that. And that's why these books all of a sudden have started flooding the market, because there's a demand for these kind of books. If you go 10 years back, you'll find that there were a lot of motivational books, self-help books, etc., that has started coming into the Indian market. Before that, Indian literature, maybe Chetan Bhagat made a big difference there. And then we saw that there were so many Indian writers also who started coming into this market. Because until now, the English literature market was more of the literature which was heavy, which was difficult to understand, uh, maybe not very well suited to the public of India. But all of a sudden we see that these easy languaged books, they start to come and flood the market, which are liked by people because they are easy to read, so the masses are starting to like it. And we see that there are so many Indian authors who also start to publish their stories. So all of a sudden, so that's why we understand that this, the consumer market also gains a lot from here, because every time, let's say somebody writes a good book, they have the intellectual property rights for it, they have the copyrights for it, and they would be the ones to gain from there. Once they gain from there, this also motivates them further, because now they have a name in the market. Even if not the money, even if they don't have the money, maybe the money goes to publication. Many a times an author does not get anything, does get, I mean, a small percentage many a times. So then what happens is that even if not, if even if that's not the case, that the author, let's say, is not getting a lot of money out of it, but at least that recognition, that acknowledgement for the work also works wonder for them. And then also they'll keep on working more, they'll start working, doing more, so that they can contribute here. So that's why just understand that from the perspective of the examination, let's say a question comes in your mains exam which says that what is the need, why should we protect intellectual property rights? All right, so need for protection comes from here. The need for protection comes from here, that we understand that both creator and the consumer, both of them, they gain something from uh, protection. So now there are different types of IPRs. There are different types of intellectual property rights that we have. So these IPRs, there are six major types. We have patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, industrial design rights, and geographical indication. So these are the six different types of IPRs. Now, one by one, we'll try to understand what these IPRs are and what they basically mean, how they basically function. We'll try to understand all these things. So first one here is a patent. Now patent basically is given for new inventions, ideas or processes, right? New inventions, ideas or processes. So if you have created something new, if you have invented something new, there is a new product that you have launched in the market, then in that case, then in that case, uh, we see that patents basically are given in this scenario. So if you invent something new, let's say I am the inventor of a fountain pen, so I can get this patent for this fountain pen. But to get this patent, there is something that we have to do, that patents are granted by the government. All right, so if let's say I invent a new pen, that I'll have to take it to the government of India. All right, I'll have to take it to government of India, and I'll have to file for getting the patent. Now this basically, what we see is that there will be exclusive rights that will be granted by the government of India to me, if they find that there is merit in this, that whatever I have brought in is completely new, completely unheard of, and there is nothing uh, which is similar in the market. And even if there is very small amount of similarity in the market. So then in that case, first and foremost, I will present the pen to the government, and I'll say that this is new pen. I'll exactly define what is this pen about, how do I make this pen, what was the idea, what is the process, each and everything, each and everything. All right, we say that you have to give a detailed public disclosure. Detailed public disclosure, that is, you have to just give each and every information about your invention. All right, you will give that information, the government will go and check it and see whether all of these are actually new and everything is fine and there is no issues as such. And once they feel that everything is fine, they can grant you the patent. All right, so that's why we say that these are rights granted by a sovereign state exclusively to an inventor for a limited period of time in exchange for detailed public disclosure of an invention. So what do we mean here? All right, what is the meaning of this? So we are saying limited period of time. Generally what we see is that this patent will be given for 20 years of time. Normally we see that the patent holder will pay a small amount of fee, a definite fee has to be paid from time to time, and then in return the patent continues. Now, although the patent and the patent owner now who has been granted with the patent has the exclusive rights to do whatever they want with the product. This pen, if I want, I can give the license to some other company and ask them to mass produce it. If I want, I'll just go back and keep it in my locker, and no, I'll not allow anyone to touch it. I don't want anything to do commercially with it, that's fine, my decision. So I have the exclusive rights over what I want to do with this. All right, what I want to do with this invention. Now one thing that is very very important about this patent is that we say that patents are territorial rights. Territorial rights. So when I say that these are territorial rights, the meaning is that patent is applicable only in the country which has granted you the patent. So what I told you is that, let's say I go to the government of India and say that please give me the patent, and government of India grants me the patent. Now this patent is only applicable in India. All right, only applicable in India. If you want the same patent to be applicable elsewhere, that you go to Pakistan and you say that I have the patent, Pakistan will say no, you don't have. You have to take the patent from me. Similarly, you go to any other country, you'll have to go and take the patent there. So that's why we are saying that this is a territorial right, that only in the country where you have been given the patent, only there it is applicable. All right, so in case of Europe, for example, there is European Union. Otherwise, in other cases, you have to go to that country and you have to get that patent. So that's why we say that patents are territorial rights. They are only applicable in the country that has granted you the patent. And then, as we discussed, that it is granted for a limited period of time, generally 20 years from the date of filing of the application. So this is what we see with patent. So patent will be given for a new product or a new process. Just remember this, that new invention or ideas or processes. So in general, we say new product or new process. So what do I mean? New product. So I said that this is a pen. This is a new pen that I have invented. So that's a new product. But then let's say what I do is that I find a new process of making the same product. Vaccine, for example. All right. So vaccine is a product, correct? Vaccine is a product, but there are various processes we discussed in our previous chapter as well, that there are various different ways in which we can produce vaccines. It can be inactivated vaccine, live attenuated vaccine, it could be mRNA vaccine, it could be viral vector vaccine, it could be subunit vaccine. So there are so many ways, right? So there are all these processes. There are all these processes in making that vaccine. So vaccine is the product and there are so many different processes. So you can either take a product patent or you can take a process patent. All right. So understand this. So that's why for new product or new process, patent would be granted. Then the next kind of intellectual property right is a copyright. Now, in case of copyright, it will be given to the creators of literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works and producers of cinematograph films and sound recordings. Now, when it comes to copyrights, copyrights are given for basically literary work or artistic work. So, for example, when you write a book, you get a copyright. When you even write a newspaper article, you get a copyright. You write a new song, the lyrics to a new song, you get a copyright. You make a painting, you get a copyright. So, in all these cases, you get a copyright. Even computer programs, if you create a computer program, also you write a computer program, you get a copyright for it. All right, so you get copyrights for all these things. So when it comes to copyrights, we understand that all these different types of works can be basically the literary and the artistic works, they can be given copyright. So for example, the literary works such as novels, poems, plays, reference works, newspaper articles, etc., all of them can be given copyrights. Similarly, computer programs and databases, they can be given copyrights. Then films, music compositions, and choreography can be given. Artistic works such as paintings, drawings, photographs, sculptures, architecture, and even advertisements, maps, and technical drawings. All of these things, they can be given a copyright. So that's a copyright. When we are talking about a copyright, it's more about the expressions, all right? Expression of the idea. So now, when it comes to copyrights, that's why just understand the basic difference between a copyright and a patent. What we discussed is that patent will be given for having a new idea. This could be a new product or a new process. All right. So having that idea can give you the patent, that you just have to describe that idea. You just can go with a prototype of your product. You don't really have to be ready with everything and then only go and get the patent. But when it comes to copyrights, copyrights are given for expressions of ideas and not only having those ideas. Example, I cannot say that I'm writing a book. This is the title of my book. Please give me a copyright. I can't. I'll have to finish that book. And once I've finished that book, then only I can go and ask for a copyright. All right. So copyright will be given for expression of ideas and not only for having that idea. That only you know, you just want to make a film. You have some story in your mind. that this is what I want to make, you can't really get a copyright for it. So to get a copyright, you have to already have done the work and then only ask for that copyright. All right. So this is how copyrights work. That copyrights for expressions of ideas, whereas uh, patents are for just having the idea. So that's why copyright protection extends only to expressions and not to ideas. Also, at the same time, even methods of operation or mathematical concepts as such. That tomorrow, let's say I go to the government of India and I say 2 plus 2 equal to 4 from today belongs to me. It belongs to me. I have applied for copyright. Please give it to me. I can't. Anything that is natural, all right, anything that is natural, anything that is a known law or a known article or anything or known formulae, you cannot get them copyrighted. So I cannot say that, okay, fine, 2 plus 2 equal to 4 belongs to me from tomorrow. No. Anything natural, anything known cannot be copyrighted. So that's why mathematical formula, physics formula, etc., they can't be copyrighted. So that's why we see that copyright extends to these kind of expression of ideas. So that's the basic difference between copyright and a patent. That patent basically is granted to ideas, whereas copyrights granted to expression of ideas. Hmm. So that's the basic difference. All right, that's the basic difference between patent and copyright. Now, in case of copyright, we see that copyright actually covers two types of rights. One which is called as economic rights, and the second one that is called as moral rights. So economic rights basically is about all the financial incentives or financial rewards that somebody might be able to draw out of their work. So that is called as economic right. And then there are moral rights which protect the non-economic interests of the author. So meaning that this is basically about uh, the relationship that the author, for example, has with the book. That maybe it's a very old book and there is no copyright as such that belongs to the author anymore, and there is no financial incentive for the author, but still the acknowledgement of the work still goes to the author, right? Acknowledgement of the work still goes to the author, and that basically is called as moral rights. So even if, let's say, there is a book which is 200 years old or 300 years old, even then they are being sold in the name of that author. Acknowledgement of the work. So Albert Einstein writes Theory of Relativity, the book on Theory of Relativity. So every time you go in the market to buy the book on Theory of Relativity, chances are higher that you are looking for the book that was written by Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein or his family, they are not getting any financial benefits out of it anymore. That's gone. That's done. All right. But the acknowledgement of the work is still going to Albert Einstein. The work is still being recognized in the name of Albert Einstein. So that is what basically really matters when it comes to copyrights. All right. So in this particular scenario, what we basically see is that there are two types of rights that copyrights can grant you. One, the economic benefits, that is economic rights, and then the acknowledgement of the work, which is moral rights. So this is how we basically have to look at the copyrights. Then the next, so okay, any question if you have from patents and copyrights? Anyone, any question? All clear? Did you see Oppenheimer? No, uh, didn't have the opportunity. I have been having classes both on weekdays and weekends, so unfortunately I can't right now. So all clear, I suppose, from the perspective of copyrights. And Himanshu, you have a question. If a person is not renewing the patent, he loses the right. Yes, yes, they do. So basically, when it comes to patents, generally it is given for almost 20 years of time. Now what happens is that when it comes to innovations, innovations work very fast. All right, innovations work very fast. So what would happen is that in 20 years of time, somebody else would also have cracked that technology. If it is such an important technology, somebody else would have worked on that technology, and they would have independently found ways to work on that technology, to basically implement that technology. So more or less, that technology or the rights that you have, the patent that you have, more or less becomes redundant then, and it is not very useful. But in many cases it also is. That, for example, in case of pharmaceuticals, we have seen that there is a very fierce battle in getting that patent. So once a medicine gets the patent, uh, they keep holding on to the patents for as long as possible. That even if, let's say, in 20 years later, nobody else has been able to crack the formula for that medicine, they would just go on to renew that patent. We'll discuss some of these concepts at a later stage as well. What is India's IPR laws and steps taken by the government to promote the same? Actually, we are going to discuss that. That's the second part of your chapter. So just hold on. After a person's death, does he lose the copyright? Actually, no. In many cases, it can actually go on for even longer duration. I mean, until 70 years after the first publication of the work, it might continue. So there are various different laws under different circumstances. But long story short, the answer is no. It's not that if the person dies, they lose their copyright. Without the revision of world history, Oppenheimer film isn't that interesting. Okay, good to know. But uh, I know this history. I mean, I'm very sure that I already know what they are going to show in the film. I've extensively studied all this. That's why I teach you nuclear physics. So I already know the story. I hope that uh, it lives up to the expectation. So yeah. So laws, yeah. So IPR laws we'll discuss. So just don't worry. That's the second part of the chapter. Perhaps not today, but maybe tomorrow. But we'll have a discussion on that as well. All right. So let's move forward. So the next one is trademark. Now, trademark basically is a sign that is capable of distinguishing the goods and services of one enterprise from those of the others. So trademark basically, for example, let's say what you see on the top, the Byju's logo, can be said to be a trademark, because this is something that differentiates the product and services of this company from others. That wherever you see this kind of this logo or this kind of a writing style, you would always understand that this belongs to Byju's, that this must be a work that belongs to Byju's. So that's why this helps us distinguish the products and services of one enterprise from others. And many a times we see that we'll be able to use these signs and symbols even in promoting this, or building that reliability that the company builds. For example, let's say when you see a quarter eaten apple, so you know that this quarter eaten apple belongs to a certain company, goes by the name Apple, that has built a reliability in the market, right? That it has launched mobile phones and laptops and tablets, etc., which have actually done very, very well, and they have a faith of the customer. So every time in the market you see that logo, you understand that it belongs to that certain company. So they would ensure that they are using every way possible to promote their company and promote their products. And it's not only about the sign and symbols. All right, it's not only about the sign and symbol. There are a lot of different ways in which trademarks can actually work. So for example, it could be nothing but even the way the fonts are used, that what kind of fonts are being used to write the name of the company, even so that can be there. Then there can be signs and symbols like the logos that you see, even the shape of the bottle. For example, let's say the Coca-Cola bottle or the Thumbs Up bottle or the Pepsi bottle, they all look different. Right? If you just notice, they all look different. Even Coca-Cola bottle or something like this, they are also trademarked. So this is also a trademark, that somebody else is not allowed to copy the same shape of the bottle of Coca-Cola. So even that is trademark. All right. So it's not only about a sign or a logo or the name, but even the colors, that what color are you using to write that name, that also counts as trademark. So that's why you'll see that always whenever a company is writing their name, they probably will use a certain font or a certain way in which they write the name. There would be a certain way in which they write it, and certain colors would always be used. That wherever, for example, wherever you see Byju's, you'll see that there is a trademark purple color that we use everywhere, whether in our logos, wherever, whether in our even ppts, etc. There is this trademark purple color that is actually used everywhere. So this has basically has been a distinguished uh, thing that we have used forever, ever since the inception of the company. So that's why we see that all these things basically are used in commerce in basically highlighting a certain company or an enterprise in the market. So that is what is called as a trademark. All right, so that's why it can be a design, sign, expression that can be easily recognized and which will identify the product or services of a particular source and makes it unique from those of others. So that is how we see trademark. Then after this, we have industrial design right. Now, in case of industrial design right, it is more about the visual design of the object rather than its functionality. For example, let's say you consider a car, or let me give you a very simple example. Batman mask. Now if you look at all these masks, basically all the Batman masks have the same role, that they have to conceal the identity of Batman, that nobody should know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. But if you look at each and every design here, used in comics, used in films, used in TV shows, everywhere the design of the Batman mask is a little different, right? Every time they come out with a new design or a new variation in that Batman mask, right? So overall, when it comes to the Batman mask, the functionality is the same, designs are different. So that design aspect, when we are talking about the visual design of any product, is called as industrial design, right? So it could be a two-dimensional or a three-dimensional design or a drawing that would be used in commerce, that would be used to showcase that object, or to add the to the value, uh, to add to the aesthetic values of the product. Consider any car. More or less every car has to do the same thing. They will have four wheels, they have to drive you around, right? So more or less they would have an engine that works. So more or less every car is the same. But then yes, there are of course small differences in the technology that they're using, but visually they are completely different. And the visual appeal of that car matters a lot. That you'll see that always whenever they're releasing a new car or something like that, they'll first release the visuals, that this is how they will unveil the visuals, that this is how this car looks like. And that is what first generates the interest in the common masses. Let's say that car is probably the best car technologically that has ever been released by any company, but the car does not look good. If the car does not look good, there are high chances that the car would fail in the market. Although this is the best car technically, but just because it does not look good, it could lose its market. So that's why these aesthetic parameters are really really important, because it actually defines that product. It actually highlights that product in the market. So that's why from this perspective we see that industrial design rights become very very crucial. So they can be a two or three dimensional pattern that would be used to prepare any product, industrial commodity or handicraft. So that's why we are talking about the visual design of an object and other aesthetic parameters which are not purely utilitarian, that they do not have any bearing on the functionality of the object. So it's not related to the function of the object, but rather the aesthetic sense that they add to the product. Even look at mobile phones, right? So mobile phone companies also will first come out with the first look, that this is the first look of the new mobile phone, that look, this time we have adjusted the angles of the camera by 15 degrees and now you have a new iPhone 15. So so we see that all these people will always be looking for it, okay? They'll always be looking for the first look of the mobile phone or first look of the product. So that aesthetic parameters matters a lot to the common masses. And that's why industrial design right plays a very, very important role in promoting the product in the market, in keeping that product intact in the market. So that's why we see that these aesthetic parameters, they matter a lot, and this is called as industrial design right. Then after that we have something called as a trade secret. Now trade secret basically is the rights that are given on confidential information. Confidential information. So when we say confidential information, the information that should be kept a secret. And why do we want to keep it a secret? Because of the fact that these are information, if leaked, it can be very easily copied by anyone. For example, the soft drinks or your Maggi masala. Now, Maggi has a holding in the market not because of its noodles, because of its spice mix or the masala that they give along with that noodles. That taste, that value that it has generated because of that, this is basically something that holds a value in the market for Nestle, for Maggi. So that's why we see that this is something which is um, a trade secret. And why do we want to keep it as a trade secret? Because if, let's say, this information is known by some other rival company or some other XYZ company, they would also start making the masala in a very similar manner. If, let's say, they have a cheaper noodle in the market, nobody would care to go for Maggi, but probably they would want that cheaper thing which already has the same exact same taste as Maggi. So that's why this could lead it to lose its market, because you cannot stop somebody from using a mix of ingredients, because this masala is what, it's nothing but a mix of ingredients. So you cannot ask somebody else to not use ingredients in that ratio. You can't say that, look, this is how I make paneer butter masala, so nobody else is allowed to use paneer butter masala like this, that if I am adding 2 spoons of salt, you should add at least 3 or 1. You are not allowed to add 2 spoons of salt to your recipe. So that's why we see that these are the things that you cannot stop somebody else from doing. So that's why you'll have to try and keep this a secret, because by keeping it a secret, you'll be able to manage that information and protect that information. Otherwise, that information leaks, your entire value of the market goes. Same goes for, let's say, something like Coca-Cola or Thumbs Up or Pepsi, etc. That all of these are what? These are all black colored soft drinks. Correct? These are all nothing but black colored carbonated water. But but all of them have a little variation in their taste, and that little variation is what holds their market. So again, you cannot stop anyone from doing it, just that's why you have to keep it a secret. So trade secret will be applicable in all those cases. All right, it will be applicable in all those cases wherever you have an information that anyone can easily copy. So you have to ensure that you keep it a secret, and that's why it will be known to a limited group of people. It will be known to a limited group of people, and it will be subject to very harsh steps according to law that can be taken by the rightful owner if that information is leaked. So that's why many a times there will be non-disclosure agreements, or there will be confidentiality agreements. These all things will be signed by all the people who know these secrets of a given company or a product. All right. So that is basically how we define a trade secret. Then, lastly, we have something called as geographical indication. Now, in case of geographical indication, we say that this is a sign. This is a sign used on products that have specific geographical origin and possess qualities or a reputation that is due to that origin. Now, depending on where the product has come from, it could be a food product, it could be an agricultural produce, it could be an handicraft, it could be anything, but it has a huge value on its origin, right? It has a huge value on its origin. So for example, Nagpuri oranges. So Nagpuri oranges are very well known if if they are coming from Nagpur, because we know that the quality of this orange will be great. It will be better than whatever orange we are getting from other parts of the country. So that's when Nagpuri oranges will have that value in the market. Other oranges will not. And geographical indication, that's why matters a lot. And we have seen that there are many products, there are many food items, there are many agricultural produce which all have been given the geographical indication. a lot of clothing, lot of textiles, handlooms, etc., they have been given geographical indication if their origin belongs to a certain place and it has its value because of that. Mysore silk sarees. So Mysore silk is important, right? So that's why that also will count as geographical indication. So basmati rice, Nagpuri oranges, and one of the best examples here, rasgulla. One of the controversial examples also, I would say, an example that many a times I'm even afraid of taking in the classroom because it becomes a sensitive issue to certain people. So when it comes to rasgulla, why controversy? Because there are two states that claim the right over, or the geographical indication right over, rasgulla: Odisha and West Bengal. Now, the problem is that both of these are connected areas, right? They share a common border. So now, because of that, the problem that they share a very common area. So because of that, what happens is that over a course of development, we it becomes very difficult for us to trace back the origin of rasgulla and where it came from, which state does it belong to. So that's why there has been a lot of controversy here. But when we look at the things, we see that there are some instances that show that the early uh, instances of rasgulla in Odisha goes back almost say, 700-800 years, and maybe in West Bengal maybe 300-400 years. But these are completely two different variants of rasgulla. So for example, if you see this brown one, this belongs to Odisha, and then this white one, the white rasgulla, was granted to West Bengal. So now the geographical indication to the white one belongs to West Bengal, and the brown one belongs to Odisha, which is also known as Pahala Rasgulla, if you've heard of it. So, so that's why the government of India took a middle path that both the states have been given one geographical indication to different types of rasgulla. Now, the origin, that's why the origin matters a lot. That if you, let's say, are consuming rasgulla, if I tell you that I have brought rasgulla for you from Mumbai, I may not interest a lot of may not generate a lot of interest in you. But I say that I have brought rasgulla from Kolkata for you, then in that case you will be interested, because you know that origin is there. If I say that I have brought vada pav from Mumbai, you probably will be more happy, right? So that's why we understand that origin plays a big value, the geography plays a big value in for us to understand that product, and for us to understand the value of that product. So that's why we see that all these that's why these controversies has also happened about geographical indication. But once the GI tag has been given, there will be a GI tag that will be given to these products. Once these have the GI tag, we see that they actually start holding that value in the market, and they will be very, very important commercially speaking when it comes to all these geographical indication. And for the people who are local to those areas where geographical indication has been given, it becomes a it starts to play a very important role for all these people also, because now they will get a better value for these kind of products in the market because of the GI tag. So that's why GI tag becomes very, very important when we look at the how the local opportunities will be created. So that's why this will play a very, very major role in all these kind of scenarios, in all these cases. So that is what we see with uh, geographical indication. Now, after this, we have the national policy on IPR. But before that, if you have any doubts, actually, what I was thinking is that I would start because this is a completely separate segment. I thought that I'll start it in tomorrow's class, uh, and we complete national policy in IPR, which probably will take me almost 1 hour to complete. So instead of leaving it halfway, I think that it's better if I take it tomorrow. If you have any doubts from whatever we have discussed, any question from whatever we have discussed? What about kala jamun? I don't think that a GI tag has been given to it. In my town, Bardwan. Okay. Yeah. So IPR policy, we'll have a discussion in tomorrow's class. It's better because in one go we'll be able to cover it. Because after this, there is one chapter that we are left with, and that is IT and communication. All right. So IT and communication is kind of a big chapter, takes 3-4 hours to complete. So that is a big chapter that we are left with, and then we'll go on to the mains discussions, the mains question papers, and we'll try to solve from various topics that we have discussed over the course of last 2-3 days. So we'll discuss about all those questions, and I'll take 2023 prelims question paper of science and technology. We'll just take a look on it, we'll revise it, we'll review it, and all these things basically we'll do in tomorrow's class. Right? So I think if no further questions, this is it for today's class. Great. So I hope that you understood everything that we discussed. Let's end our class here. We'll start with national policy on IPR tomorrow. And then after completing this chapter, we'll move on to our last chapter and one of the most crucial chapters from examination perspective, that is IT and communication. All right. So these are the things that we'll discuss in tomorrow's class, and then smaller areas of mains examination, prelims paper discussion, etc. We'll do tomorrow after these two chapters. All right. So I think this is it. All right. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being patient and sitting through the entire day of lectures. Let's meet tomorrow, and we probably will be able to complete. I obviously will be able to complete the syllabus in tomorrow's class. So I'll see you tomorrow morning. Good night.